Hey friends, today I'll tell you an incredible story about a loyal friend who did something that even doctors couldn't. This little girl's life was hanging by a thread. No one believed in a miracle anymore. But then her dog did something that changed everything. This is a story of loyalty, love, and a real-life miracle. What happened? How did an ordinary dog bring hope when all hope was lost? Watch the video till the end. I promise you'll be amazed. Before we start, hit that like button if you believe in the power of friendship, and share in the comments the most incredible things your pets have done. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more amazing stories. Ready? Let's go. Night had completely enveloped St. Grace Hospital. In room 304, 8-year-old Lucas Bennett silently fought against what seemed to be an inevitable fate. The heart monitor emitted weak, irregular signals. With each beep, his pulse grew fainter. Anna and David, his parents, sat by his bedside, unable to hold back their tears. Lucas lay motionless. His face was pale, his eyes closed, his breathing labored. It was a sight that tore at their hearts. Beside him stood Max, his loyal golden retriever. Max lay at the edge of the bed, resting his muzzle on the boy's hand, as if shielding him from invisible threat. Just a few hours earlier, Dr. James Foster had entered the room. His face was shadowed with sorrow. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly, breaking the silence. "There's nothing more we can do. Lucas's heart is too weak." Those words felt like the ground had been ripped out from under Anna and David. They knew time was running out. From that moment, the room became a cage of despair, filled with silent tears and empty stares. But for some inexplicable reason, Max refused to give up. He paced nervously around the room, as if waiting for something. Suddenly, he stopped. His ears perked up, and his gaze fixed on the window, where the full moon shone brightly. It was as if he sensed something beyond human perception. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Anna noticed Max's anxious behavior and exchanged a glance with David, her eyes filled with both hope and despair. Suddenly, the heart monitor began emitting sharp, erratic signals. Anna jumped to her feet. "Doctor, quickly!" she shouted. Doctors and nurses rushed into the room. Dr. Foster adjusted the equipment as the staff desperately tried to stabilize Lucas. Amid the chaos, Max suddenly leaped onto the bed and pressed himself against the boy. "Get the dog out of here!" Dr. Foster snapped irritably. "No!" Anna pleaded, her hands trembling. "Please let him stay. We tried everything else." The doctor hesitated but finally nodded. Max lay down beside Lucas. His breathing became steady, as if synchronizing with the boy's. The heart monitor's signals began to stabilize. Lucas opened his eyes. For the first time in days, he whispered faintly, "Max, you're not leaving me." The room fell into complete silence. Anna broke down in tears. David gripped his son's hand tightly. Dr. Foster stood frozen, staring at the scene in utter bewilderment. He couldn't explain what had happened, but Max seemed to know. In his eyes was a deep, incomprehensible wisdom, as if he understood something that eluded human reason. Relief washed over the room, though confusion lingered. The doctors glanced back and forth between the monitors and Lucas, as if unable to believe what they were seeing. Lucas kept his eyes on Max. His breathing was weak, but steady. The dog remained by his side, as if his presence alone was working miracles. Dr. Foster looked at Anna and David, choosing his words carefully. "I don't understand what's happening, but Lucas is responding. We'll keep monitoring him. This kind of recovery is highly unusual," he admitted, his tone tinged with doubt. While Lucas's parents couldn't take their eyes off their son, Max seemed unusually exhausted. The normally energetic and cheerful dog looked drained, as if he'd endured a great ordeal. He carefully climbed down from the bed and lay on the floor, but his gaze never left Lucas. Anna noticed the change. She reached out and gently stroked Max's head. "You saved Lucas, Max. You're our angel," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Despite Lucas's sudden improvement, tension hung in the air. Dr. Foster immediately ordered a series of tests to understand what had caused such a rapid recovery. The nurses quickly adjusted the equipment, and Lucas, though still quiet, seemed aware of his surroundings. Anna and David were asked to step out, but they couldn't bring themselves to leave. They felt they were needed now more than ever, both by their son and by Max. David suddenly remembered an article he'd once read. He turned to Anna, his voice uncertain. "Have you heard about cases where animals?" Anna shook her head. "It's not scientifically proven," she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. Her fingers tightened around Lucas's hand. "David, I don't know what to think. But maybe Max really did something miraculous, something beyond our understanding." At that moment, Lucas closed his eyes, not from exhaustion, but from a peaceful sleep he hadn't experienced in weeks. The monitors continued to show stable readings, easing their fears but raising new questions. Anna and David stood silently by his side, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Had Max's love saved Lucas, or was there something deeper and more mysterious at work? In the hours that followed, the hospital was enveloped in an uneasy silence, filled with unanswered questions. Lucas's condition remained stable, and even Dr. Foster, usually skeptical of the unexplained, was at a loss. He spent hours reviewing the test results, but found no medical explanation for the boy's rapid recovery. In the room, Max never took his eyes off Lucas. His exhaustion was almost palpable. His gaze held a deep devotion, as if he'd given a part of himself to save the boy. David couldn't look away. He remembered a story his grandfather had once told him about how, in times of great need, dogs could transfer their life force to those they loved most. The old tale had no scientific basis, but as David watched Max, he felt the legend had come to life. Hesitantly, noticing how pensive Anna had become, he decided to share the story with her, hoping it might bring her some comfort. "Anna, don't you think there's something wrong with Max? He looks so worn out, not just tired from a long day, but as if something's drained his strength," David said worriedly. Anna, still holding Lucas's hand, turned to him. "Yes, he's different. It's like he's feeling what Lucas feels, as if there's some kind of connection between them." As they spoke softly, Lucas's eyes fluttered open again. This time his gaze was clear. A faint smile touched his lips. "He was with me the whole time, Mom," Lucas whispered. His fragile voice carried a surprising firmness, making Anna and David exchange a stunned glance. "I felt so alone, but I could feel Max. He never left me, not even for a second." His words hung in the air, filling the room with an intangible yet profound emotion. David swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it. How is that possible? How could Max be where Lucas was? He looked at Max, who was now sleeping soundly by the bed, but the dog's ears twitched slightly, as if he were still on alert. That night, as the hospital corridors grew quiet and the lights dimmed, Anna sat by Lucas's side while David went to fetch coffee. It was then that Lucas said something that made Anna's heart skip a beat. "Mom, in that dark place, someone was calling me. I thought it was Max, but it wasn't just him. I felt like someone was asking me to stay, like it was important." A shiver ran through Anna. She couldn't find the words. There was something eerie yet comforting in his revelation. Perhaps there was something or someone beyond what the eye could see, using Max to bring Lucas back. As she held her son's hand and watched him drift back to sleep, Anna couldn't help but wonder, what did Max know that they didn't? The next morning, an unusual stillness filled the room. Lucas was asleep, his breathing even and calm for the first time in days. David sat nearby, but his attention was fixed on Max. The dog hadn't moved from his spot. His head rested heavily on the floor, as if all his energy was focused on staying close. Anna noticed it too and said softly, "David, have you seen? He hasn't left Lucas's side for a second, and he hasn't eaten since yesterday." David nodded, but his concern went beyond Max's loyalty. He knelt beside the dog and ran his hand over Max's soft golden fur. Max didn't react at first, only lifting his tired eyes and letting out a heavy sigh. In his gaze was something more than exhaustion, a deep, piercing sadness mixed with something David couldn't quite understand. It was as if Max knew something beyond human comprehension. "Maybe he understands more than we think," David whispered. At that moment, Lucas's eyes opened. He noticed Max on the floor and reached out to him. Anna helped him sit up, her face filled with worry, but Lucas seemed calm. "I need him, Mom. It's because of him that I'm still here," he said. His voice was weak, but there was a firmness to it that left the room in stunned silence. When Dr. Foster returned with the test results, his face was a mix of amazement and confusion. "Lucas's results are normal, but it's unexplainable. There's no medical reason for such a rapid recovery. I can't make sense of it," he admitted. He glanced at David and Anna, then paused, choosing his words carefully. "Did you notice anything unusual? Anything that might explain this?" Anna took a deep breath, then replied with quiet confidence. "It's love. Max gave everything for our son." The doctor nodded silently, unable to find the words, and left the room, leaving behind an air of mystery. When it was time to leave the hospital, the entire medical staff gathered to applaud Lucas for his miraculous recovery. The doctors still couldn't understand how he had improved so quickly. David carried Lucas's backpack, while Anna held his hand, guiding him gently to the car. In Lucas's pocket was Max's collar, now a talisman and symbol of the love that had brought him home. Though Max's absence was felt, his bed remained in the corner, and his toys were scattered around the house. The atmosphere wasn't sad. That same day, Lucas sat down to draw again. This time, he sketched Max running joyfully through green meadows under a clear sky. "He's happy now," Lucas said with a soft smile, "and he wants us to be happy too." Watching his son, David felt a spark of inspiration. It was all thanks to Max's legacy. "What if we start helping other animals? Max helped us," he suggested. "We could do it in his honor." Anna, touched by the idea, smiled warmly. "I think he'd like that." Inspired by this new purpose, they began visiting shelters, caring for abandoned dogs, and finding them loving homes. Lucas, though still recovering, eagerly joined in, always ready to share Max's story with anyone who would listen. Every act of kindness not only honored Max's memory, but also strengthened the invisible bond they still felt with him. Over time, Max's memory lived on, not just in the hearts of Lucas, Anna, and David, but in the lives of countless animals whose fates were changed by his influence. They realized that the love Max had given them hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into something greater, touching the lives of many. And so, Max's spirit continued its journey, not just as a memory, but as a force inspiring their family and the world around them to carry forward the same unconditional love he had embodied.